of DMU Shivajo. Air Peace and Max Air Airline have been contracted to provide 3 aircrafts and run as many shifts as possible to facilitate this evacuation.
It was not actually a memo. What I attempted to do was to inform Council on progress made so far with respect to the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. In other words, the plan that we have for the evacuation of Nigerians stranded in Ukraine.
This does not involve the students trapped inside Ukraine, the minister says.
And to also inform Council that the President has graciously given us approval, along with the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, to do the best we can, to do the needful. In other words, to evacuate those Nigerians that are willing to come back home. I did inform Council that on the whole, we have some say about 7,100 Nigerians, a conservative estimate, both the registered and the unregistered. We assume that we have that number of Nigerians living there.
From the State House in Abuja, Dorcas Bello, Viewer Television News.
The Nigerian Senate on Tuesday passed a total of 49 bills out of 68 considered during voting on the Constitution Review bills. The bills were contained in a report of the Committee on the Review of the 99 Constitution. The reports.
As the process for the review of the 1999 Constitution is on, a total of 19 alteration bills failed to make passage during the exercise, which lasted for almost 5 hours in plenary. President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawal, while setting the tone for voting, explained that only bills which enjoy passage in both Senate and House of Representative chambers will be transmitted to the state houses of assemblies for concurrency. According to him, any bill which fails to pass in either Senate or House of Representatives will automatically stand rejected by the National Assembly.
As the stage is set for new version of the Nigerian construction, the Senate has approved financial autonomy for state legislature, judiciary, and local governments in the country. Approval came on Tuesday during the voting on the report of the Senate Committee on the Review of the 1999 Constitution, 5th Alteration Bill 2022. The reports.
Lawmakers at the upper legislative chamber voting on the Constitution Amendment report approved the much-awaited financial autonomy for local government areas, which analysts believe may help bring good governance to the grassroots. It also voted in favor of financial autonomy for the judiciary, which is believed will help in the advancement of justice. Senators, however, rejected a number of bills. This includes pensions for presiding officers of the legislature, bills to override presidential vetoes in constitutional alteration, and to override ordinary money bills. The bill for special seats for women in the National and State Houses of Assembly also fell short of the required two-thirds majority.
Number 37, Mr. President, affirmative action for women in political party administration, setting aside 35% of executive for at all levels for women. Bill number 38, Mr. President, is indigenous rights. And this seeks to alter the provisions of Section 31 and 318 of the Constitution. Mr. President, Bill number 39 is the power to enforce compliance of remittance of accruals into the Federation account and review of the federal allocation formula. Mr. President, Bill number 40 deals with independence of certain bodies. Mr. President, Bill number 41 deals with the removal of the transitional lawmaking powers of the executive. We cannot be in transition in perpetuity. The first bill we'll vote on is Bill number 1, 2022, Local Government Financial Autonomy. We can vote now. Yes, 2 no, abstain 1, total 93. Everybody has voted. And this bill is also passed.
In addition, the Senate also rejected bills for an act to alter the provision of the Constitution to provide for affirmative action for women in political party administration.
Now, 3 bills intended to promote active participation of women in holding political offices have been rejected by federal lawmakers in the House of Representatives. This is despite attempts by the leadership of the House to promote the bill which supports a certain percentage in appointment to be reserved for women in line with affirmative action for women participation in governance. The reports.
The 2 bills were designed to create specific numbers of seats for women in the parliament, at the political parties level and by federal appointments. The bills specified 35% and 20% respectively in line with affirmative action for women. But the 3 bills failed to pass through during the clause-to-clause consideration as federal lawmakers vehemently voted against it. The presence of the wife of the Vice President and the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, an effort by some lawmakers to salvage the situation by bringing the demand down to 15%, could not salvage the situation as federal lawmakers insisted on kicking against the bills.
Mr. Speaker, any society that excludes 50% of its population is not going to live up to its potentials.
On the need to ensure greater participation for our women folk without necessarily discriminating against the men folk by reducing the percentage proposed in this clause from 35 to 15. That is the amendment I wanted to propose, Mr. Chairman.
The Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, last gasp turned to salvage the situation, could not also save this last bill, which is compelling the President to appoint 20% of federal ministers in his cabinet.
The system is down. The system is down, and I'm going to put the question. Those in favor of the 20% for women say aye. Those against, please say nay. Clearly, 230, the ayes have it. 20% for women.
The next step now is for both chambers to harmonize the bill before transmitting to the 36 state assemblies for further legislative action.
Still on the Constitution Amendment, women and various women groups stormed the National Assembly on Wednesday to protest the rejection of 3 main bills that seek to support women representation in governments, either appointive or elective. These women protesters with placards and blocked the main gates leading to the National Assembly complex, saying they are storming the National Assembly to protest and ventilate their anger against the rejection of gender and equality bills. Speaking through the leader of the women, Abiola Akeode, she described the rejection of the reserved special seat of 111 for women as wicked and inhuman, while calling on the federal lawmaker to revisit and vote in favor of the bills as a matter of urgency and necessity. They also faulted the voting procedures used by the leadership of the both Senate and House of Representatives, leading to the killing of the bill.
It's a matter of power. When you are dealing with vulnerable groups, you feel that you have power over, and you can do anything to that person. Yes. What we saw in the National Assembly yesterday, the disdain, the impunity with which the gender bills were thrown out and voted out, the noise we heard, we didn't show any form of remorse whatsoever. It was a noise that is telling us, what can we do? Yes. Who are we? Who are the women? What can they do? Which power do they have?
This morning to register our displeasure to the Senate failure to pass the proposed bill, Bill 35, if I'm right, that seeks to create special seats for women in the national and the state assemblies.
How do you explain that a Nigerian man can afford indigenship to his foreign wife, but a Nigerian woman can't do the same to her foreign husband? Meanwhile, we have a number of our men who have traveled to the Western countries and their wives afford them citizenship. And then looking away from just politics and governance, let's trickle it down, because the policy of every nation has a direct impact on the personal life and living experience of the individual.
Today, Nigerian women are angry. Nigerian women are very angry. We are here gathered in front of the National Assembly expressing our anger towards what the legislators, towards what the senators have done to Nigerian women. We are asking for women representation. We are asking for our basic fundamental human rights. Women are part of the citizens of this country. Our constitution needs to acknowledge that.
Recall that both the Senate and House of Representatives during the consideration of the Constitution Amendment voted against the special seats for women in the Parliament. If passed, the bill will have come down to creating about 111 extra seats for women at the National Assembly. Now, following the rejection of the three women-oriented bills by both the Senate and the House of Representatives, lawmakers on Tuesday, the Deputy Chief Whip of the House, Nkiruka Onyejocha, says Nigerian women are hurt with the move. Onyejocha said this while briefing newsmen in her office a day after both chambers of the National Assembly voted against the gender-related bills. Onyejocha, who sponsored the bill that advocates for special reserved seats of 111 for women in the parliament, said by this rejection, Nigeria has lost the opportunity of gaining some grounds at 104 presently out of 118 countries in the world who have given good representation for women. The federal lawmaker says the action of her colleagues amount to a gang-up, conspiracy and hate, which ultimately will continue to affect the generation of women to come. Now, when Newslive returns, House of Representatives investigates duplication of functions of agencies. Details of this and more comes to you after the break. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Newslive from Viewer Television. Now a recap of our top stories. Buhari approves $8.5 million to evacuate 5,000 Nigerians from Ukraine. Women stomp National Assembly over gender bill rejection. Plus, New Zealand police move to clear anti-vaccination occupation. Now, the House of Representatives has resolved to investigate duplication of duties of some agencies of government to help consolidate gains recorded by Nigeria on World Index of Ease of Doing Business. Following a motion from the House Chief Whip, Mohammed Mongonu, the House noted the need to review the functions of the about 1,500 agencies, department boards, parastatals, and corporations existing in the country. This, he said, is with a view to eliminate bureaucratic bottleneck and unnecessary clash of interest, which are counterproductive.
That with the existence of about 1,484 agencies, departments, boards, parastatals, and corporations in the country, with the attendant duplication of function and clash of interests, there is likelihood of the latest World Bank annual ratings to slide considerably. Believes in the need for stock taking and review the functions of all government agencies. The House to resolve to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate duplication of duties, overlapping functions, and counterproductivity of established agencies, departments, boards, parastatals, and corporations in the country.
About 2,090 Nigerians will return home to Nigeria from Ukraine on Thursday after finding their way to Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Gabriel Aduda, who disclosed this on Wednesday in Abuja, confirmed that the chartered flight will depart on Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, to pick up Nigerian evacuees back home. He noted that the first batch of the evacuees are expected to arrive in Nigeria on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. Aduda also assured Nigerians that the federal government is working round the clock to bring back Nigerians home. Now, the federal government on Wednesday in Abuja expressed the hope that the one-month warning strike embarked upon by ASU on February 14 will soon be truncated. ASU called its members out on the warning strike to compel the federal government to address their demands, some of which had been lingering since 2009. Minister of Labour Employment Chris Ngige expressed the hope of truncation of the warning strike when he spoke with newsmen at the end of the reconciliation and meeting between the government and the union. According to him, ASU officials agreed to return to their members with offers made by the government and revert to him before the week runs out. He noted that many of the items in the 2022 Memorandum of Action had been dealt with exhaustively, while some were still being addressed. Earlier, the president of ASU, Professor Emmanuel Osodeke, said members, students, and Nigerian people want to see action from the government. He noted that the quantum of money that ought to have been used for funding education in Nigeria was being lost to other countries. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, said it had received 128 Nigerian returnees from Libya. The Director General of the agency, Mustafa Habib, on Wednesday in Lagos said that the returnees were received through the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos. Habib, represented by the acting coordinator of the Lagos Territorial Office of NEMA, Ibrahim Farinlohe, said that the returnees left Mitiga International Airport, Tripoli, on Tuesday night aboard a chartered Barak Boeing 100 to 800 aircrafts with registration 5A DMG. The Director General said that the returnees were made up of 38 females and 90 males. Habib admonished the returnees to look beyond seeking greener pastures in foreign lands. He assured them that the federal government was conscious of the aspiration of the youth and was providing an enabling environment where everyone will achieve his full potential. Now, Lagos Agro-Processing Productive Enhancement and Livelihood Improvement Support Project has created about 12,350 jobs across all its activities and employed about 17,469 direct and indirect beneficiaries, which includes farmers and SMEs with improved technologies, physical inputs, job creation, and infrastructural support, among others. The project has also contributed about 333.9 million to Lagos State GDP by 924 farmers supported by the project in 2020 from the production of output survey validated by Lagos State Bureau of Statistics, LBS, which translated to 0.07%. The Lagos State coordinator of the Appeal project, Olaranti Segoye Ovebo, gave the information during an interaction with journalists at the project coordinating office in Oko-Oba, Agege, Lagos. Sagua Ovobo also disclosed that about 199 million naira worth of products in aquaculture, poultry, rice have been sold by some women and youth since they received grant support from Lagos Appeal projects. Now, a federal high court in Abuja on Wednesday admitted a letter from the Office of the National Security Advisor detailing how the former aviation minister, Femi Fani-Kayode, allegedly collected the sum of 26 million naira from the office. The letter was admitted as an exhibition as part of the efforts by the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, EFCC, to establish money laundering charges against the former minister. Fani-Kayode was docked in 2018 by EFCC on a 5-count charge bordering on the money laundering to the tune of 26 million naira and criminal breach of trust. When the trial resumed, EFCC counsel Farouk Abdullah informed the court that the matter was for continuation of trial and the witness was in court. Now, a number of IDP camp shelters have been down by fire at Kalari Muna Garage in Maiduguri. The incidents, which happened at about 1:15 p.m. on Wednesday, 3 fire services were at the scene to contain the disaster. It will be recalled that similar inferno destroyed over 2,000 houses 2 weeks ago. The cause of the fire and the number of the houses destroyed and casualties remains unknown.
Kayan mutane da yawa sun kone. Again gashi yau ma an kira motocin ma babu wuta ma ya riga ya gama ci. Motocin ma suka zo suka kashe wuta. Saboda haka
agun ini ma izauna. Zaman mu na kan wannan ba kyau ba. Ba daɗi, ban ji daɗi ba, ba mu ji mun gaji zaman kan wannan mun gaji. Ina kai kokari ku zo ku ci mu. Ban ma son kaya, ban ma son komai. Ku zo ku ba mu abun mu nima abun mu zauna lafiya. Haka muna so.
You're still watching Newslive on Viewer Television. We now bring to you business, international, and sports news right after the break. Do stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Business News. My name is Joy Malik. The federal government has disclosed plans to improve the level of implementation of donor finance projects in the country. Now, according to the government, the implementation process is affected by challenges such as bureaucratic bottlenecks, capacity challenges, political interference, and obtaining varied and misaligned approvals processes between local authorities and development partners. Now, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, said these factors had led to Nigerians' low ranking in terms of the level of implementation of projects funded by the World Bank. One of the critical sources of funds for the execution of key projects in Nigeria is through donor financing, especially from multilateral bodies such as the World Bank and the African Development Bank. The minister, while admitting the funding gap, said that when borrowed funds were not properly utilized, growth was impaired and economic development distorted. Now, despite the high expectations and hype around the Central Bank of Nigeria's digital currency, the e-naira major retailers and vendors in the country are yet to adapt it over 4 months after launch. Now, following months of publicity by the CBN, the e-Naira was unveiled by President Muhammadu Buhari on 25th October 2021. Today, March 2nd, 2022, makes it 4 months and 5 days since the launch of the central bank digital currency. During the launch, the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele noted that the introduction of the e-Naira came after 4 years of research conducted by the Apex Bank. As of December 2021, the e-Naira consumer wallet recorded over 583,000 downloads, while the merchant wallet was downloaded 83,000 times, with downloads occurring in over 160 countries. The CBN also recorded over 34,000 transactions through the wallet amounting to over 188 million naira, according to the Apex Bank's controller, Enugu branch, Chiedozie Okonjo. Now, however, despite the huge numbers, observations show that major retail stores in Abuja and other parts of the country have yet to adopt digital currency as a medium of exchange. Visits to stores such as ShopRite and Spar located in the Federal Capital Territory revealed that the operators were not aware of digital currency functions. Still on e-Naira, efforts by the management of the Nigerian Customs Service to get striking clearing agents back to work seem to have failed as the meeting between the two parties has ended in a deadlock. Now, the freight forwarders operating at both the Tinkan Island as well as Port and Terminal Multipurpose Limited Command of the Customs had last week begun an indefinite strike following the expiration of a 72-hour ultimatum given to the federal government to review the electronic violation system for imported vehicles and cargoes. Now, the government, through the Central Bank of Nigeria, had recently introduced e-violation and e-invoicing policy for imported goods using what is called vehicle identification number for the violation system at the stakeholders meeting organized by the NCS with the clearing agent in attendance in Ikeja, Lagos on Tuesday. The striking agent vowed not to restore their services until their demands are met by the government. Addressing journalists after the meeting, the Controller General of Customs, Ahmed Ali, who was represented at the event by the Assistant Controller General of Customs in charge of Zone A, Modupe Aremu, explained that Customs was going to modify the complaints of the clearing agents to arrive at a conclusive arrangement for the VIN initiative while reacting to developments. The Deputy National Secretary to the National Association of Government Approved Freight Forwarders, Shegun Musa, insisted the strike would remain until their demands were met. Now, moving over to fuel scarcity, the cost of transportation is on the increase across the country following the hike in the pump price of premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, in filling stations in states. Now, motorists still besiege the fuel filling stations that dispense PMS in Abuja and neighboring Nasarawa, Niger State on Tuesday, as many outlets in Nasarawa State and other states sold the commodity at 200 naira per litre and above. This was contrast to the federal government approval pump price of 162 naira to 165 naira per litre in Abuja. Black marketers freely sold petrol at 400 naira per litre and above. The National Public Relations Officer, Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, Ukadike Chinedu, disclosed that the price of petrol in Port Harcourt River State was above 200 naira per litre in filling stations. Meanwhile, the queues persisted in many filling stations as the scarcity of petrol continued on Tuesday. Brent, the crude against which Nigerians oil is priced, closed the $405 per barrel price on Tuesday as it rose to the highest price ever recorded since about 14 years following the ongoing war in Ukraine after it was invaded by neighboring Russia. In order to gain from the rising price of crude, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited on Tuesday vowed to increase Nigerians' oil production as the country had not been meeting its OPEC crude oil production quota lately. Early last month, OPEC increased Nigerians' crude oil production target for the month of March, despite the fact that the country had been missing its approved monthly output targets. OPEC raised Nigeria's oil production target for March 2022 to 1.718 million barrels per day, indicating a marginal increase from the 1.701 million barrels per day target that was approved for Nigeria in February. Nigerians missed its crude oil output target for January 2022, pumping 1.46 million barrels per day against 683 million BPD as approved by OPEC. Since the war began in Ukraine, crude oil price had kept climbing as it moved up to $106.27 per barrel on Tuesday, rising by $8.3 or 8.47% when compared to its cost the previous day. And that's all we can take on business news. Many thanks for watching. Good night.
And on news around the world, I am Jennifer Okolo. Algeria has discussed with Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio an increase in gas supplies to compensate for a possible decline from the Russian side. On the menu of the talks were the strengthening of bilateral cooperation, in particular to meet the needs of European energy security in light of the conflict in Ukraine. Di Maio had tweeted shortly after his arrival in Algiers. Russia launched an invasion of Ukraine on Thursday, sending shockwaves internationally and triggering a battery of Western economic sanctions against Moscow. Algeria is the second supplier of gas to Italy behind Russia. The Algerian state-owned hydrocarbon giant Sonatrach said it was ready to provide more gas to Europe, including through the Transmed pipeline linking Algeria to Italy. Italy, which imports about 95% of the gas it consumes, is one of the European countries most dependent on Russian gas. Now, Libyan lawmakers have confirmed a new transitional government. The cabinet was submitted by Prime Minister Fatih Bashagh to the East-based House of Representatives. Libyan lawmakers approved a new transitional government. Prime Minister-designate Fatih Bashagh submitted his cabinet to the Eastern-based House of Representatives, where 92 of 101 lawmakers in attendance confirmed it in a vote broadcast live from the city of Tobruk. The move fills division in a country where two prime ministers claim legitimacy. PM-designate Bashagh faces embattled PM Abdul Hamid Daba, who has repeatedly refused to cede power before the organization of presidential and parliamentary elections in June. Earlier this month, Daba proposed a 4-point plan to hold a simultaneous parliamentary vote and referendum on constitutional amendments late in June. While fires burned across Parliament grounds and violent clashes broke out between protesters and police at an anti-vaccine mandate demonstration on New Zealand's Parliament grounds in extraordinary and chaotic scenes rarely seen in the country. After nearly 4 weeks of impasse between the protesters and police at Parliament, hundreds of officers in riot gear stormed the occupation on Wednesday morning and by the afternoon had gained significant ground, tearing down tents, towing vehicles and making 38 arrests. The police said protesters used fire extinguishers, paint-filled projectiles, homemade plywood shields and pitchforks as weapons, and a cord was set up as a trap wire. Speaking at Parliament today, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the police expected there will be hostility, resistance and violence while they had planned for it. There's another thing entirely to witness it. She says a number of police officers had been injured and the fires had destroyed, among other things, a children's playground, which is open to the public on Parliament grounds. The protest, which is in its 23rd day on Parliament grounds, began as an objection to the government's temporary vaccine mandate for some parts of the workforce, but has since become a vector for a range of desperate complaints, including anti-vaccine disinformation, Kwan style, conspiracies, and racist and violent rhetoric. Meanwhile, 10 people have died and thousands have been forced to evacuate their homes in eastern Australia as almost a week of torrential rain and recorded flooding have submerged houses, washed away construction cranes, and smashed boats like toys. Flash floods had swept through 185 miles of Australia's coast across 2 states by Tuesday, with warnings in place for the most popular city, Sydney, as the country endures the final month of the La Nina weather pattern. Storms began at the Queensland town of Jemp on February 22nd. The drenched coastal towns on the way to the city of Brisbane, which received 80% of its typical annual rainfall in 3 days. Brisbane registered 26.6 inches of rain from Friday to Sunday, breaking its 3-day rainfall record of 23.6 inches from 1974. In the past week, it has received 31.2 inches, 6 times the amount it typically sees during all of February. Queensland State Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk described the event as a rain bomb. All cab drivers in full protective suits are transporting patients to and from COVID clinics in Hong Kong as morgues run full and hospitals become overwhelmed amid a huge coronavirus outbreak. With tens of thousands of new cases each day, the city's zero COVID strategy has been thrown into disarray. The city of 7.4 million is preparing to test the whole population. Designated clinics take in confirmed coronavirus patients, and a fleet of specialized taxis transports COVID patients with ambulances in short supply. And that's much we can take on the international scene. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to Sport News. I am Adamu Joseph. Manchester United football director John Motto says a thorough process is underway to find their next permanent manager, pledging the club remains focused on challenging for top trophies again. United, who announced their latest financial result, has endured another difficult season despite the return of superstar forward Cristiano Ronaldo to Old Trafford. A top 4 finish is the best English Giants can hope for domestically, but they only managed a draw against lowly Watford on Saturday and are just 2 points ahead of West Ham and Arsenal. The Gunners also have 3 games in hand. United have a tough set of fixtures coming up, including meetings with title-chasing Manchester City and Liverpool, as well as the second leg of their Champions League tie with Atletico Madrid, which is delicately poised at 1-1. The club, who have not won a trophy since 2017, have been working under interim manager Ralf Rangnick since December, when the German succeeded Ole Gunnar after a poor start in the campaign. Novak Djokovic's turbulent start in 2022 took another twist on Wednesday as the 20-time Grand Slam champion revealed he had split from his longtime coach Marian Baja after last year's ATP finals. Djokovic was deported on the eve of the Australian Open in January and on Monday lost his #1 ranking to Russian Daniil Medvedev. Djokovic began working with Slovakian coach since he was a teenager in 2006, though they split for a year in 2017. Baja stopped working with Djokovic following the tour finals in Turin in November. He had not been seen as part of Djovic's backroom team in Melbourne before the Serbian player was deported in a visa row over his COVID vaccination status. Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich is considering selling the club. According to reports, Abramovich is set to receive offers to Chelsea by the end of this week, with at least 3 parties interested in buying the Blues. Express UK reports. Abramovich faced the threat of sanctions following Russia's invasion of Ukraine last week. The 55-year-old has already attempted to hand over the day-to-day running of Chelsea to the club's charitable foundation. Abramovich did so in the attempt to put distance between himself and Chelsea, but the trustees are yet to accept his proposal, with some considering quitting. I beg your pardon. Offers are set to be made to Abramovich this week, but that could change if he does not receive sanctions. Thanks for watching. I am Adamu Joseph. That's all we have on Sport News.
And that was all on Newslive, but before we go, a recap of our top stories. Buhari approves $8.5 million to evacuate 5,000 Nigerians from Ukraine. Women storm National Assembly over gender bill rejection. Plus, New Zealand police move to clear anti-vaccination occupation. Many thanks for watching. I'm John Martake. Have a good night.